Bonjour. Je voudrais d'abord remercier M. le ministre de nous avoir fait l'honneur de venir. Bonjour, les réunions de lancement. Je voudrais aussi remercier M. le président de Internet Society. Je voudrais d'abord remercier M. le ministre de nous avoir fait l'honneur de venir. Bonjour, pour le programme de ce matin, on va démarrer avec deux petites présentations. Berengaï va nous présenter le processus multipartie prenante et l'importance de dialogue. Pour le programme de ce matin, après s'arriver avec une petite présentation, Berengaï va nous présenter sur le processus multipartie prenante et l'importance globale de. Et après, on procédera au discours d'ouverture. Donc, si vous n'avez pas d'objection par rapport au programme, nous allons démarrer. Berengaï, are you ready? Yes.
C'est pas là où il est comme glissement.
Donc, Berengaï va parler en anglais. Donc, s'il vous plaît, vous écoute.
Bonjour. Good morning, the Honorable Minister, the President and CEO of the Society, Mr. Andrew, senior government officials. I'm overwhelmed with microphones. Well, I guess I can. Okay, I'll try. Colleagues, works, right? It's my pleasure to speak to you this morning. It was a very important event. We have been raised by the Honorable Minister. So I'm very happy and delighted to come to Senegal for the second time. This is my second time in Senegal. And, I really feel honored and also quite excited. I think it's a beautiful country. I'm going to speak briefly about an important process that we are following, particularly for this project. Yesterday, Honorable Minister, we spent some time discussing about the technical aspects of Internet of Things. The discussion was so much engaged. They were so much engaged because there were different stakeholders, different players, colleagues representing the consumers, colleagues representing governments, different departments. We had participants from the media. We had participants with an interest in the internet ecosystem, the technical aspects. And one thing that I actually learned from this discussion was that the diverse views of these players made the discussion quite high level as well as rich. So I'm going to just remind ourselves, participants here present, that the process that we're engaged in is one process that cannot necessarily be done by a particular group. It probably needs the different voices, different expertise, and different players. So I'll quickly run through some of the characteristics of the multi-stakeholder approach. But to begin with, I'll start by just reflecting back on the structure of the internet. So the internet is an open, interconnected, and interdependent ecosystem. It's from the foundation of the internet. It's based on collaboration and shared responsibility. This is what has brought all the positive aspects of the internet, the things that we enjoy today. It's accessible, it's permission-free. It allows for anyone who has an innovation to develop an innovation based on the ecosystem. And it has a global reach. And this fundamental aspects of the internet makes it quite unique. We also know that each network is responsible not only for its own security, but also contributes to the overall security of the media. So, why is it important for us to really consider a multi-stakeholder approach when thinking about the future of the internet, the future of the Internet of Things. But just to reflect a bit on the definition itself, this is a common definition. This is a reminder, and I'm sure most of us are familiar with this, that multi-stakeholder simply is a process of bringing the different participants from various entities, groups, entities interested in a particular topic without weighing in the level of interest. Is this process complicated? Is it? Oh, it's a question, I don't know. Maybe it's complicated, or maybe it's simple. It can become complicated if one participant assumes the role of another participant. In that picture, they are trying to depict the judge trying to read or to understand coding, and a software engineer trying to understand the law. But there's complementarity there. Each one of these two players can actually weigh in their competence, trying to unpack things that they're not really familiar with. So just to talk about 4 particular aspects or characteristics of the multi-stakeholder approach. Firstly, it's open and accessible. This means that the extent to which participation is open and accessible to relevant stakeholders. The aspect of inclusivity is also quite important. Different views, considerations that are actually based on evidence is also particularly important as a characteristic of consensus. I think this is one important aspect. At the end of the process, at the end of the day, participants should be able to come to a common purpose in a collaborative manner, which means there's a give and take. Transparency and accountability are another important aspect. And the use of clearly defined transparent procedures and mechanisms is also quite key here. So is there really one form of this approach, of this process? Not necessarily. We know a few organizations, a few groupings that are applying the multi-stakeholder approach in different aspects. And they may not necessarily be one way of this approach, but the fundamental principles or core principles should still apply. In ICANN, for example, we know that an individual can actually come up with an idea that can be discussed through various processes that sometimes seems quite lengthy. But at the end of the process, there has to come to a common agreement, a common understanding. This approach can be used in different aspects, and in our particular case, one of the things that we have committed ourselves as partners in Senegal is to actually unpack how Internet of Things can be an opportunity, but can also pose certain challenges for our communities, for our networks, for our policies. And this approach is also uniquely can be applied in the process formulation stage. It can be applied in the drafting policy stage. And of course, there are considerations, key considerations that can be applied in each and every stage. In the policy drafting stage, I think some of the things to reflect on is really to also get that public voice, the people who are affected either by the policy, the people who apply the policy, and the people who use the policy for different purposes. I think I'll run through and we'll go to the last slide. So this is nothing new, really. It's just a reflection on a particular process that we are engaged in as we develop a security framework, an Internet of Things security framework for Senegal. It's a reminder to all the stakeholders that there is scope for us to always think about the interests of the other players in the room, the other constituencies in the room. And with that, I'll end here. Thank you.
Thank you. Merci, Véronique. Donc, on va passer à la suite pour faire la présentation de l'initiative au Sénégal. Monsieur le ministre, Monsieur le Président des documents, Monsieur le représentant du directeur général de l'ARTP, Monsieur le représentant de la présidente de la commission des données personnelles, Monsieur les représentants du secteur privé, de la société civile, des universités, des étudiants, des entrepreneurs. Je voudrais, avant de commencer, souhaiter la bienvenue à Monsieur le ministre. Merci de sa présence. Je m'en vais essayer de vous présenter le projet qui a été initié au Sénégal au mois de mai dernier. Donc, dans quel contexte ce projet a été fait? Dans le contexte de l'Internet Society, la mission de l'Internet Society, c'est de promouvoir le développement, l'évolution et l'utilisation de l'Internet au bénéfice de tous les individus à travers le monde et dans le respect de sa vision, qui est de mettre l'humain au centre du système. Cette nouvelle initiative du processus multipartite prenant que les autres ont lancé a été lancée dans 3 pays, donc le Sénégal, le Japon et le Canada. Et ce processus vise à démontrer que l'utilisation du modèle multipartite prenante dans l'élaboration des politiques et des processus réglementaires de l'Internet permet justement d'atteindre la mission et la vision de l'Internet de mettre l'homme au cœur du numérique. Dans le contexte sénégalais, je pense que M. le ministre ne me démarquera pas, vous sortez de l'Assemblée nationale avec l'adoption du nouveau code des télécoms. Il y a aussi la mise en œuvre du plan stratégique numérique 2025. On est en train d'actualiser le fonds de développement du service universel. On a élaboré un plan national pour le développement du haut débit. Il y a une ouverture du marché des télécoms avec de nouveaux entrants comme les ASP et les FNO. L'ARTP a lancé une consultation publique sur l'Internet des objets qui va se terminer au mois de novembre. D'ailleurs, les gens de la salle qui n'ont pas encore répondu de donner leur avis, c'est important. Et il y a aussi la mise en place du conseil du numérique sur lequel l'État travaille. Donc, le contexte actuellement est assez favorable à cette initiative-là qui vise à démontrer que c'est ensemble qu'on va définir les politiques pour que l'environnement soit favorable. Donc, le processus, rapidement, on a démarré, comme je dis, au mois de mai. Le Sénégal a accueilli l'AIS, African Internet Summit. Et on a eu, pendant ce sommet, à organiser une réunion avec la présidente de la CDP pour un peu démarrer sur ce processus et parler de l'Internet des objets, faire découvrir et surtout faire un état des lieux. Donc ça nous a été, pour nous, ils ont l'occasion de faire un état des lieux de l'Internet des objets qui a été présenté à la session d'hier. En juillet, on a été au Canada ce qui est multipartie prenante, les gens se parlent, et surtout qu'il y a un processus qui est documenté. C'est-à-dire qu'on peut beaucoup apprendre au Canada, parce que c'est très difficile. En août, à partir du mois d'août, nous avons travaillé en comité restreint pour mettre en place le MOU. Bien signé avec sur les bases. Et je voudrais à ce titre remercier particulièrement le directeur de l'Académie spéciale qui a été le leader. Il nous a vraiment mis la pression pour qu'on avance et qu'on ait le MOU avant la réunion aujourd'hui. Donc, on a finalisé le MOU en octobre et il a été signé. Je tiens particulièrement à remercier également l'ARTP pour son implication. Donc, ce projet est un projet qui a une gouvernance qui est définie. Donc, il y a un comité de pilotage composé des différentes parties prenantes. Donc, je reviendrai sur le comité de pilotage. Il y a un secrétariat qui est présidé par M. Vérondac, qui a fait sa présentation tout à l'heure. Et il y a l'équipe de projet local avec un coordonnateur, un project manager et un qui vont présenter le rapport de la session dans l'après-midi. Donc, dans le comité de pilotage, qui est défini, donc, le comité est présidé par le ministère et la RTP assure la vice-présidence et ils ont assuré le secrétariat. Évidemment, il est ouvert au secteur privé, à la société privée, à l'UNESCO qui a fait une étude sur le modèle multipartite et au secteur de l'académie. Donc, la configuration actuelle, c'est ça. Donc, il y a des représentants des différentes parties. Et il y a une équipe de projet avec le secrétariat, un facilitateur. Là, on a étudié à 5. Il y a les dans le étudié à 7 et le facilitateur. Un coordonnateur qui assure la liaison entre le copier et le secrétariat, un project manager et les un plan d'action, donc je ne vais pas détailler le plan d'action parce qu'on est dans un modèle consultatif et multipartite prenante. Donc on propose, mais ce qui sera validé, ce sera ce que les groupes de travail décident. Donc on a l'engagement des acteurs. Donc Bureau Afrique de l'ISO donne tout ce qui est financement des études et prend en charge le secrétariat de la communication. Le ministère de la Communication prend en charge tout ce qui est logistique et va contribuer énormément sur la partie scientifique. Et la RTP, on rencontrera le DG qui va déterminer sa participation. Il a déjà pris l'engagement de contribuer à partir de l'année prochaine. Et le chapitre sénégalais, encore une fois, gère l'équipe de projet et la coordination. Donc voilà, en conclusion, je pense que ce projet devrait doter le Sénégal d'un cadre de sécurité de l'Internet des objets pour atténuer les risques et de sécurité liés à l'Internet des objets qui est présent dans nos vies quotidiennes aujourd'hui. Donc, il y a des choses à faire. Surtout d'établir des bases solides pour une mise en œuvre du modèle multipartite prenante dans la définition des politiques publiques et la documentation. Et surtout pour le pérenniser et encore une fois, vendre ce leadership et cet exemple du Sénégal aux autres pays, pas seulement africains, parce qu'il y a beaucoup de pays développés qui n'ont pas encore légiféré sur l'Internet des objets. Donc le Sénégal aujourd'hui est un peu utilisé comme une école, comme une université, un labo qui va faire quelque chose qui sera appliqué ailleurs. Et ça permettra également de favoriser le développement de contenu. Donc il y aura de la formation liée à la sécurité de l'Internet des objets. Il y aura aussi de la formation sur le modèle multipartite prenante qu'on commencera demain. Donc, demain, il y aura 2 jours de formation pour l'ensemble des parties prenantes, mais surtout pour les gens qui sont impliqués dans le projet, pour leur dire, voilà, quand il y a un conflit, comment on le règle, etc. Donc, comment travailler ensemble. Donc, il y a une formation de 2 jours qui sera donnée demain. Et à ce titre, je voudrais remercier M. Laristri, qui est le président de Global Governance et qui nous a beaucoup aidé pour mettre en place ce projet-là. Ça nous permettra également de renforcer la collaboration au sein de la société de l'Internet dans la sécurité de l'Internet des objets et le processus de gouvernance de l'Internet en général. Donc, tout ça rentre dans le processus de la gouvernance. Donc voilà, j'en ai terminé. Je vous remercie
Là-bas.
Non, non, Suisse, à Canada, j'écoute l'anglais. Les Zoom, j'écoute le français.
Comment? On n'a rien touché ici. Depuis le début.
C'est pas bon. C'est pas ce que je veux faire.
Donc, je veux continuer.
I'm going to continue with English because when I speak French, it's gonna be hard. Excusez-moi pour mon français terrible. Je suis canadien, mais je suis de Toronto. Je ne vais pas prendre beaucoup de temps, mais je crois qu'il y a beaucoup de choses beaucoup plus intéressantes à parler, mais je voudrais dire quelques mots par rapport à ce processus et pourquoi je pense que c'est important. L'Internet est un réseau de réseaux et ça fonctionne par une association volontaire et chacun fonctionne avec d'autres pour créer un ensemble qui est bon pour tout le monde. Cela signifie que nous devons faire les choses de manière volontaire. On ne peut pas vous forcer à collaborer avec moi et toi aussi, tu ne peux pas me forcer à collaborer avec vous. Donc, on doit volontairement collaborer et chacun travaille pour son propre intérêt. C'est comme ça que l'Internet est.
So you have to participate one way or the other. This means we need a multi-stakeholder environment. But this is extraordinarily difficult in the case of security. The reason it's so difficult in the case of security is because the interests don't always align. The things that are valuable to you might not be valuable to me, and conversely. And you always have, when making a product, an incentive to make something cheaper because, of course, people don't want to spend extra money. We know that in general, security is often under-resourced because it doesn't have the money behind it. It isn't an immediate threat, it's a threat in the future. So we need instead to design a system that makes us all more secure and that addresses the threats from the Internet of Things in a way that makes us all more secure and yet treats all of our interests together. And that's the reason this is so important. We've had some success with this effort in Canada already. We've had a community that has come together there. But the truth is that we can only do this bit by bit. We can do this in various places that can take the leadership in showing the rest of the world how to make the Internet of Things more secure. We get potential tremendous benefits from the Internet of Things by hooking up more stuff to the Internet, by attaching devices that give us more information about the real world. It allows us to prepare the world and prepare ourselves for changes before they happen. And that gives us some real benefit. So we don't want to give up the Internet of Things, but we need to make sure that we deploy this in a responsible and careful manner. And that's why we need a process like this. I'm delighted that Canada took the lead on this in North America, and I'm really, really pleased to be here in Senegal, where you're taking the lead here in Africa to teach everybody how to build a more secure network for everybody, a more secure network of more attached things that give us great benefit, and yet that can be secure, safe, and valuable for the whole world. So thank you very much. I look forward to the discussions here today. And with that, I'll stop. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. The Minister of Telecommunication, Post and Digital Economy. Mr. the CEO of ISOC, Mr. the representative of the president of CDP, ladies and gentlemen, representative of telecommunication operators, ladies and gentlemen, representative of institution of the Senegalese state, ladies and gentlemen, representative of consumer association, ladies and gentlemen, professional of digital, distinguished invité to your ranks, and ladies and gentlemen, I present the apologies of my Director General, Mr. Abdul Karim Fall, who could not make it here. I'm going to read his speech. Before my speech, I would like to welcome all the foreign delegations. We are happy to have you among us in the country of Terenga. We hope that you will manage your time to discover our country and its millennium culture. I thank also ISOC for having chosen Senegal with Japan and Canada as a reference in the use of the multi-stakeholder process in the development of political policies. It's an honor for our country to launch this collaborative approach in identifying the policies and processes in the ITO, which is called IoT. IoT is defined as a world institution which should enable us to have services in interconnecting physical and virtual objects for that are working together. In other words, these are words of our daily life connected to internet, enabling us to supply innovative services and to collect data. With a penetration of 68% in 2018 in Senegal, internet is important in the society of information. Internet is accelerating the life of process in domains like health, trade, and to name but a few. That's the reason why this issue is calling up on us. In fact, in our participation to this, the regulation authority launched last month consultation, which is extended to everybody and is willing to have the participation of everyone in the uses to promote the network technology to encourage the legal framework to apply to the actors of the IoT, the regimes to plan to facilitate a wider range of IoT, but also the security to assure security, integrity, and the protection of personal data. You have up to tomorrow, all of you, I mean tomorrow, Friday, November the 30th at 1 p.m. to share with us your proposals and your contribution as regard the issues raised here. And in this way to participate in the participative regulation for development of the digital. The consultative document can be downloaded from the ARTP website, www.artp.sn. Ladies and gentlemen, in Senegal, the Senegal Development Plan of the President Macky Sall, President of the Republic, consider internet as the founding of development through measures to develop the technology of information. In the framework of these public policies, the Ministry of Telecommunications, Post and Digital Economy, and ARTP participate in this initiative with the Africa Bureau and ISOC. I particularly thank the Minister Abdoulaye Balde for his commitment, but for the implementation of the steering committee for this process. We make our services are going to take part to this process and support it throughout. Ladies and gentlemen, the development of IoT go with the development of IPv6. In 2020, there will be 4 objects connected, which is going to be 25 billion objects connected. We are showing the commitment of ARTP and the minister to get to IPv6 to guarantee full success to IoT and the development of digital. I invite you also together to reflect on other issues and take the advantage of the opportunities that they give, things like artificial intelligence. And I hope that this workshop will be fruitful after 18 months of work on IoT in Senegal. Ladies and gentlemen, let me thank ISOC and the Minister of Communication and Digital Economy, Mr. Abdoulaye Balbe. I will not end without warmly thanking the Africa Office of ISOC for the dynamism. This collaborative spirit and participative sustain the words of we wish a full success to your work, and thank you for your great attention. Thank you.
Thank you, representative of the Director General of ARTP. Interpreters, hope it's getting fine. So we are now going to speak maybe a bit slower because it was a bit too fast. General Director, CEO of ISOC, representative of the General Director of ARTP, representative of Optic, chairwoman of ISOC, Senegalese Chapter. So for the rest, I would just say Senegal ISOC or ISOC Senegal. Ladies and gentlemen, representative of the private sector, distinguished guests, all protocols duly respected. I would like first to say that I'm really satisfied and honored to come and chair the opening ceremony of the initiative on the multi-stakeholder template for the security of the Internet of Things here in Senegal, and the training workshop on that template, that multi-stakeholder model. So the ministry, through on my behalf, say thanks to ISOC and that this beautiful initiative. So IDEC word, either to Senegal, and in partnership with the Ministry of Communication and the Post and the Economy and the Digital Economy, ARTP, and the Africa Office of ISOC. The objective of this initiative is to put in place in 18 months a collaborative approach aiming to identify the challenges and the solution leads for a better, for a far-reaching policy which is going to govern the security of Internet of Things in Senegal. It is then in line with the vision of Senegal 2025. Actually, our department as a government authority in charge for the application of the TIC, just to confirm the inclusive approach which was implemented in all the process for the formulation of SN 2025 by preparing a ministerial ordinance on the creation and of a steering committee for its implementation. Before that, an MOU between the department, AR, ARTP and ISOC was signed to define the program for reinforcing or enhancing Internet of Things between our different structures. The setting up of that framework follows some reforms and projects that was initiated to put in place an enabler for the good development of the sector. The main works are the following, and the President has already talked about that. So first is to update the institutional and legal framework to better take into consideration the new usage and also the new services, development of the national plan for the high debit according to the orientation of broadband for the International Union of Telecommunications, updating of the national strategy on cybersecurity so that we can have a secured cyber space. The Park of Digital Technology of Jamyajo, PTN, with the signing of the first contracts for the building, and also put in place an exchange point for internet for the improvement of the quality and the communication cost. Launching of the process to put in place the National Observatoire for the digital aspect to reinforce security, to better support the initiatives relating to the digital trade and also the digitization of all the services such as transportation, education, health, finances, and so on. The project Gender and ITC to reduce the bridge between men and women in the use of the ITC. The project to put in place also a development fund for the digital and for that the President of the Republic of Senegal, His Excellency President Macky Sall, has decided to launch the fund, which is just for the digital aspect, and that fund amounts to 1 billion to 3 billion CFA for a better support of those young people that are innovative in the ITC sector. Ladies and gentlemen, if together we achieve to put in place all these initiatives, if we succeed to implement all these initiatives, then would have made a big step to improve the digital aspect in the country. In the same vein, a round table for the donors will be organized to share these different projects and the program for SN 2025 with all the financial and the technical partners that have been identified in this sector, including the national private sector. So I am convinced that a partnership between our different institutions to have an internet which is secured is coming at the right time, and that will contribute to meet the SDGs and also to improve development in Senegal by for that society of information as understood by UIT. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like once again say thank you to this important workshop, which is associated to panels and the training sessions which are high level. I also take the opportunity which is given to me here today to once again say congratulations to ISOC World, ISOC Africa, and ISOC Senegal, but also to their partners, and encouraging them to continue such initiatives for a better contribution of the sector in national economy. And in that perspective, I can give you my word that the Senegal is going to reinforce and enhance the consultation with all the stakeholders involved to put in place a collaboration and the governance framework, and especially through the imminent creation of the National Council for the Numeric. And to finish, I say I wish you fruitful workshop, and I'm also interested in the deliberations that are going to come out of this meeting. Thank you.
So we're going to, thank you, Mr. the Minister. We're going to suspend the proceedings to let you go, but we're going to continue. We have already had breakfast. Can we have a group photo, Mr. the Minister, before you go? Thank you.
Wow, c'est vrai.
So if you would prefer that,
Ah, oui, ça va, je peux présenter en français. Donc, c'est plus facile à faire comprendre parce que le projet, c'est un peu compliqué. Donc, est-ce que vous avez déjà une idée quand je vais présenter? Vous avez déjà mon présentation PPT? Victor?
Oui, oui, oui.
Ah, en fait, je crois que j'ai vu votre écran, donc je peux voir mon slide, mon diapo.
Oui.
Donc, c'est toi qui tapez pour le prochain ou c'est moi?
C'est moi. Je vais
D'accord.
passer chaque next slide.
D'accord. Donc, quand je parle, je vais vous informer le prochain diapo.
Oui,
C'est comme ça, OK. Mais maintenant, vous savez quand je vais présenter?
Oui, dès qu'on reprend dans quelques minutes, on va te donner 5 minutes pour que tu essaies de résumer, comme on est en retard.
D'accord. 5 minutes ou 10 minutes? Pardon?
Oui, il serait préférable si vous pouvez réduire, puisque jusqu'à présent, on attend le retour des personnes et le programme a totalement dérapé actuellement.
Au maximum 10 minutes.
10.
OK, donc mon présentation sera 10 minutes maximum.
Oui. Merci
Donc,
beaucoup.
OK. Maintenant, c'est midi 13. Quand je vais présenter?
Oui, ça va. Je te dis qu'on est prêt.
OK, très bien. Je suis ici attendant.
Vous n'avez pas de câble?
Peut-être dans 10 minutes.
Oui, oui.
OK, très bien. Merci beaucoup, Victor. Really? So you can see my video?
Le représentant de l'UNESCO va faire une petite intervention.
Call from her, and she wanted to intervene. So we are going to try to give her the floor. And she's going to make a remote presentation.
Thank you. Bonjour. Je suis Chiron. Je suis installée à Paris. J'espère que vous pouvez m'attendre. Ça vous
Good
va?
morning to all. Can you hear me?
Je peux continuer? Excusez-moi, est-ce que je peux continuer? Je ne peux pas vous attendre. Maintenant, ça va? Je viens d'arrêter mon vidéo.
Ok, vas-y.
Ça va?
Oui, oui, tu peux y aller, on t'écoute.
Ah, d'accord, ok. Donc, je vous remercie beaucoup, Varigai. j'ai entendu beaucoup de résonation. Ça va maintenant? Donc, merci beaucoup d'inviter l'UNESCO pour présenter ces projets très importants. C'est l'un des indicateurs sur l'universalité de Internet. Victor, la prochaine diapo, s'il vous plaît. C'est un projet est fait suite à l'adoption des indicateurs de développement des médias de l'UNESCO il y a déjà 10 ans. Ces projets, c'est très nouveau pour soutenir de nouvelles résolutions de la conférence générale de l'UNESCO 2015 qui a adopté le nouvel concept de l'universalité de Internet. Le prochain diapo, s'il vous plaît. Qu'est-ce que l'universalité de l'Internet? Pour l'UNESCO, c'est 4 principes fondamentaux pour gouverner le développement de l'Internet. Donc, l'Internet devrait être fondé sur les droits humains, c'est la lettre D. L'Internet doit être ouvert, c'est la lettre O. L'Internet doit être accessible à tous, c'est la lettre A, et nourri par la participation de multiples acteurs. Donc, en bref, c'est D-O-A-M en français, mais en anglais, c'est R-O-A-M, c'est jaune. Donc, on a promouvoir ces concepts depuis des années. J'espère, après mon présentation, vous pouvez aussi mémoire ces 4 lettres magiques. Donc, c'est D-O-A-M. Droit humain ouvert, accessible à tous et nourri par multiples acteurs. J'ai vu le programme de votre atelier, c'est vraiment un sujet très, très pertinent. L'UNESCO est toujours très intéressé et engagé avec vous et de discuter. On vient d'organiser une discussion ouverte sur le sujet intelligence artificielle. Nous croyons ces 4 principes, même si quand même aussi également appliqué à notre discussion de sujet d'Internet d'objets et blockchain et toutes les nouvelles technologies d'Internet. Victor, le prochain diapo, s'il vous plaît. Donc, on a mis en place ces 4 indicateurs pour mesurer dans quelle mesure ces 4 principes sont réalisés au niveau national. Diapo prochain, s'il vous plaît. Comment on fait ça? On a conduit un processus très transparent, inclusif, ouvert, avec tous les acteurs multiples engagés, 2000 experts consolidés du monde entier. On a organisé 46 réunions. Aussi, on a fait des tests de faisabilité dans quelques pays. Aussi, on a appliqué, on a fait pilotage des indicateurs en 3 pays, incluant Sénégal. C'est pourquoi je suis ici aussi. Je vais présenter quelques résultats de pilotage en affaires au Sénégal à la fin de mon précédence, à la fin. La prochaine, please. Ah, ça, c'est la photo très bonne mémoire quand on fait la consultation en Afrique aussi. Ça, c'est le document final. On arrive maintenant. Comme vous voyez, on vient de lancer ces 4 des indicateurs sur ligne aussi en français. Vous pouvez télécharger dès que maintenant. Ces 4 comprennent 303 indicateurs, incluant presque 80 indicateurs transversaux aussi. Diapo prochaine, s'il vous plaît. La structure, c'est un peu compliqué, ça comprend 4 niveaux. Pour chaque catégorie des indicateurs sur DOAM, on a demandé quelques questions et pour chaque question, on a développé plusieurs indicateurs. Et pour chaque indicateur, on a proposé la donnée et la source qui peut mesurer. Diapo prochaine, please. En plus des indicateurs sur DOAM et transversaux, on a mis en place quelques indicateurs contextuels pour donner une vue globale pour le pays en fait l'application pour savoir qu'est-ce que la situation économique, la situation démographique, développement, d'égalité et de gouvernance, les modalités de gouvernance et aussi le développement de DIC. C'est-à-dire que notre indicateur n'est pas pour comparer le pays, mais vraiment pour identifier le problème dans certains pays et donner la politique recommandation. Alors, la première catégorie des indicateurs, c'est le droit. Je suis désolée, ce diapo, c'est en anglais. Je vais juste très brièvement vous présenter le majeur thème. Cette catégorie des indicateurs va mesurer. La première, c'est le cadre juridique et réglementaire. Deuxième, c'est les droits fondamentaux de liberté d'expression, liberté d'information, la presse et la sécurité des journalistes. Après, on va mesurer l'accès à l'information, la liberté d'association et participation. Aussi, très important, le droit au respect à la vie privée et la protection des données personnelles. Et dernièrement, on va aussi inclure le plus large les droits économiques, sociaux et culturels. Diapo prochaine, s'il vous plaît. La catégorie ouverture. D'abord, en fait, on va mesurer le thème politique et réglementaire dans tous les catégories des indicateurs parce que c'est vraiment l'instrument pour mesurer les politiques Internet. Dans la catégorie ouverture, on va aussi mesurer des normes ouverture, des marchés ouverture et des contenus ouverts. Aussi les données ouvertes, c'est-à-dire l'accès et disponibilité des informations de gouvernement pour le public. Diapo prochain, please. Catégorie accessibilité à tous. On prend aussi une large approche pour mesurer juridique et réglementaire sujet et la connectivité technique et géographique, l'accessibilité de coûts de réseau et les services, l'accès équitable entre le urbain et rural, entre les femmes et les hommes, etc. Aussi, ça va mesurer le contenu et la langue. La catégorie M, c'est pour mesurer dans quelle mesure il y a les discussions, les forums et au niveau national pour discuter les politiques Internet. Aussi, comment le pays participe en la discussion de politique régionale et internationale. Diapo.
Can you summarize in 2 minutes? I think we are okay in 1 minute.
Ok, merci. Donc, diapo prochain. Ok, on va juste passer. Ouais, ça les catégories transversaux, genre des jeunes, etc. Aussi de sécurité. Diapo prochain. Oui, ça c'est la bonne nouvelle. Je voudrais vous partager. Le PDC vient d'approuver application des indicateurs au niveau national juste la semaine dernière. Donc c'est pourquoi je vous présenter, il vous encourager à appliquer ces indicateurs aussi en Sénégal. Diapo prochain s'il vous plaît. Comme je viens de mentionner, on a fait un pilotage au Sénégal entre août et septembre cette année. On n'a pas encore fini toutes les évaluations de tous les 300 indicateurs, mais grâce au travail de ma collègue recherche ICT Afrique, on a déjà utiliser 124 indicateurs et collecter la donnée et faire une étude préliminaire. Diapo prochain, s'il vous plaît. Ouais. Ces rapports pilotage du Sénégal n'est pas publié encore, c'est encore travaux en cours, mais il a déjà trouvé ces indicateurs est très utiles et très pertinents pour le pays comme le Sénégal. Il a aussi donné quelques recommandations politiques, comment renforcer les droits sur Internet, comment avancer l'ouverture et accessibilité dans le pays, comment on peut promouvoir plus de participation de multiples acteurs dans le pays. Il y a beaucoup de questions aussi à poser. Diapo prochain, s'il vous plaît. Bien sûr, je parlais avec notre consultant qui a fait ses études au Sénégal. Il a rencontré aussi les difficultés pour collecter et accéder les données détenues par les gouvernements, par les secteurs privés. Il a certainement le manque de données actualisées dans le pays. Aussi, notre cadre des indicateurs est vraiment vaste et complexe. C'est pourquoi on a besoin plus d'efforts et engagement de plus d'acteurs et soutenir les acteurs dans le pays. Prochain diapo, s'il vous plaît.
Vous nous entendez?
Oui, donc...
Il faut conclure maintenant. S'il vous plaît.
Pardon?
Il faut aller à la conclusion, s'il vous plaît. Maintenant.
Oui, donc la conclusion maintenant, c'est on va faire deux choses en futur en Sénégal. Premier, on va continuer l'évaluation des indicateurs pour faire une évaluation complète. La deuxième, c'est je vous encourage nous contacter si vous êtes intéressé, nous aider et participer dans un comité de pilotage pour finir ces évaluations complètes. Mon collègue au bureau d'UNESCO en Sénégal est aussi présent, je comprends. Aussi, vous pouvez me contacter. La dernière diapo, s'il vous plaît. Ah oui, c'est ça. Donc, si vous êtes intéressé, nous contacter par email ou avec mon collègue dans la salle. On va vraiment avancer et compléter notre étude. des indicateurs universalité au Sénégal à partir de maintenant. J'espère que notre travail sera aussi utile pour vous, aussi pour la discussion aujourd'hui. Merci.
Voilà, merci beaucoup, merci beaucoup. Nous allons partager vos documents avec les collègues.
Oui, bien sûr. Aussi, tous les documents indicateurs en français aussi disponibles sur notre site web.
D'accord, merci beaucoup, c'est bien noté.
Merci.
Voilà, merci beaucoup. Comme vous le voyez, hein, il y a plusieurs participants et contributeurs.
The participants and the people that are contributing to the project. So now we are going to open or to start the round table. And for the rest of the morning, we're going to proceed like that. So during the round table, there will be different speakers. Maybe we are going to ask Mr. Sullivan to come over here. And after those speakers, we are going to open the exchanges with the room. If we can do that right after, that would be good. If not, if it is lunchtime, we will go have lunch and come back to finish or to continue with the debate. Thank you very much. So just as a reminder, very briefly. That's what we've been saying since we started. We have two main aspects in the process. So you have first the multi-stakeholder process. So we have talked a lot about that. However, what is special here is that we have to identify a perimeter for priority initiatives when it comes to IoT and the security. So there is a soft aspect, which is the organization which will be put in place, and a concrete or tangible aspect, which is going to support it, is how we are going to learn and develop the security activities around that infrastructure related to the IoT. So for this debate, I think that first we are going to give the floor to Andrew. And as you know, he has, so he is in internet and he has, in a very specific way, studied the questions of IoT. That was one of his activities, or one of his main activities. So Andrew, you have the floor. Merci beaucoup. Je vais continuer en anglais. Je crois que plutôt que
I think that there are a few things that we need to remember about the Internet of Things that that we want to sort of set up as the background while we contemplate how to work on this. The first thing is that we don't really know what the extent of the Internet of Things is. So we don't know what we're talking about. And it's always dangerous to make security rules about things where you don't know what they are, because that makes for that makes for early closing off of possibilities. There are a lot. There's a lot of potential in the Internet of Things. You want that closer? There's a lot of potential in the Internet because we have to figure
on ne sait pas exactement les choses, quelles sont les choses que nous pourrons connecter dans le futur. Alors, il faut penser donc à l'étendue. Là, on est dans ce bâtiment, à un moment donné de l'histoire, et il y a différents biens qui sont à l'intérieur de ce bâtiment, ou bien qui constituent le bâtiment. Il y a les murs, il y a des systèmes de refroidissement et même des systèmes de chauffage et tout ceci. Il y a aussi un système électrique et ainsi de suite, ainsi de suite. Et vous pouvez construire à l'intérieur des bâtiments beaucoup de choses, beaucoup donc de capteurs pour essayer de détecter les défauts ou bien les défaillances par rapport au bâtiment. Donc, c'est par exemple dû aux activités sismiques, aux activités environnementales, à l'usure. Ce sont des choses que l'on peut intégrer dans la construction du bâtiment. Mais il faut essayer de penser à tout ceci. Nous avons des portables, téléphones portables que nous changeons de temps à autre. Et la durée de vie d'un téléphone, c'est toujours 4 ans. Ça, c'est... On ne change pas donc les infrastructures telles que les bâtiments, on ne les change pas en général, on ne les remplace pas, comme par exemple la façon dont on remplace les sources d'électricité, ainsi de suite. Ce n'est pas donc chaque année que l'on fait des aménagements au niveau donc de ce bâtiment. On veut que le bâtiment soit toujours stable. Ça, c'est une dimension sur laquelle on doit travailler, c'est-à-dire tout ceci est en rapport avec la durée de vie sur laquelle nous allons travailler. Il y a donc des instruments ou bien des choses qui vont rester pendant longtemps et d'autres qui ne vont pas rester pendant longtemps. Donc, ça, c'est donc ce à quoi nous faisons face. L'autre chose par rapport à l'Internet des objets, c'est l'étendue des valeurs, mais aussi l'étendue des coûts. Il y a beaucoup d'appareils dont on parle aujourd'hui qui seront très chers, comme les systèmes de surveillance pour les moteurs des avions. C'est bien si ceci est très cher, parce que les avions sont très chers, donc c'est tout à fait normal que ce soit cher. Donc, beaucoup plus vous pouvez ajouter donc des milliers de dollars, mais c'est un bon investissement parce que ça va vous permettre de trouver à temps quelles sont les différences qu'ils peuvent avoir au niveau du moteur. Mais les autres capteurs qui peuvent durer pendant 12 mois et autres, ça peut être ça peut ne pas être cher. Donc, dès l'instant que c'est pas bon, vous pouvez le jeter. Ça aussi, c'est une considération par rapport à la valeur des choses que vous avez. Donc, tout ceci, c'est très important. Il y a des personnes qui vont investir beaucoup d'argent ou bien beaucoup d'efforts pour sécuriser certains objets. Ce qui veut dire qu'on doit protéger presque tout. On doit donc presque tout protéger. Nous devons donc penser à tout le système, mais pas seulement à la seule chose. Et le dernier point sur lequel je vais m'épancher, c'est qu'on a besoin de réfléchir dans la discussion quels sont les points sur lesquels on va se focaliser. Ceci peut être très large. Je l'ai déjà mentionné, comme les capteurs au niveau des bâtiments et autres. Nous avons des thermostats que nous mettons au niveau des murs et qu'on peut remplacer très facilement, mais il y a le contrôle il y a les systèmes de contrôle des bâtiments et des avions qui peuvent être très chers et très compliqués. Donc, les choses que vous avez dans votre véhicule ou bien au niveau des bus. Il faut donc que l'on définisse quelle sera l'étendue de nos travaux, sur quoi nous allons travailler dans ce contexte. Parce que ça, c'est un très grand problème. Parce que si vous avez une étendue qui est très large, vous ne savez pas exactement quels sont les points sur lesquels vous allez vous focaliser. Ça, c'est donc, il faut, avant que l'on continue le débat, il faut que l'on comprenne quelle est l'étendue. Pour savoir, il faut que l'on comprenne exactement quelle est donc notre liberté de mouvement par rapport à tout ce qui est en rapport avec la sécurité, la durée de vie des choses dont nous parlons. On peut prendre des décisions par rapport à l'étendue qui va nous permettre de réduire ou de rétrécir le problème. On peut dire, par exemple, on va travailler juste sur les appareils qui sont statiques, qui ne peuvent pas être transportables et qui peuvent durer pendant, disons, 18 mois ou bien quelque chose comme ça, ou bien 5 ans et autres. Mais ça, c'est en tout cas ce que je veux dire. Il faut, avant que l'on ne commence, donc il faut que l'on définisse exactement quelle sera donc l'étendue de tout ce que nous allons faire.
It's very useful. Everyone has understood the 3 dimensions that have been dimensioned and our work in reality. And this is what is expected from the audience, is to see what are our real needs in Senegal. What are the domains in which the use of connected objects will bring value to people and countries in general. Think business model, think of usefulness. These are those guidelines that will enable us to define the scope in Senegal. This is what we're calling you on, but do not forget, as I said it, the soft aspect, even insisted on it. Which organization are we going to implement to support all these projects, be it in the short term, we have to organize and define an action plan, but also in the long term. The floor is going to be given to maybe ARTP. I know that we will end up with the minister. Good morning, everyone. We're going in the same direction as Sidevan, sorry, because in the public consultation that ARTP has launched, we put the stress on perimeter to respect or to define. This means that those who come to those public consultation need to tell us, if you take, for example, the first aspect of use, what are you going to promote? In accordance with what Professor Tijan Sek said today, what will enable us to have a replacement, to create employment? These uses to promote go along with it. Are we going to focus to the domestic area, or are we going to get to the industrial area? I think at that level, answers are expected from the audience. We insisted also on the network technologies that are linked to the frequency resources, because it all depends on the aim we have. If you want to build a small network with a small range or small power, it won't be the same with a network, be regional or departmental network. It's not the same technology, it's not the same network. And as a result, we have the legal framework that should be applied to the operator of network or service provider in relation to that IoT. I think that the perimeter is determining the type of answers to all these questions. And when we finish with determining the perimeter, setting the perimeter, is easy to implement the security, the confidentiality, integrity. Is it relevant today to focus on those aspects in a network of IoT which is destined to breeding? I think that the issues that are at stake are different. For example, within a company, the lighting. In all cases, the issues are different. So depending on the perimeter, we normally should have the answers to all these questions. As far as we are concerned, the idea is to make sure the IoT be an accelerator for the development of digital development, but also social development in general for Senegal. In this respect, we can determine our scope, but we shouldn't choose something which is so broad that we will have problems to give good guidelines for a good framework enabling to draw the best out of it. I think in broadly speaking, I insist on that beyond the discussion that we had here, I want that everyone take part to the answer to that public consultation that will help us to go forward, and the result of which will be part of this multi-stakeholder process. Thank you. Thank you very much. We can see it. We have here two main stakes of the intervention of the representative of the Director General of ARTP. The perimeter we're going to choose, the applications we're going to choose will have an impact on the different regimes. As you can see, we are getting to important stakes. On the other hand, we called on the participation of everyone in the ongoing process. The process is not just the answer, but it's also the deadline is for tomorrow. But also the multi-stakeholder process, which is going to be implemented so that ARTP can deliver these recommendations. I would like also to say, I read yesterday in the internet, especially in some certain number of countries, that in their plan, they don't want to go fast in the regulations. This is also another dimensions to take into account. What's more important is to have a mastery, a grasp on what we're doing. Now we're going to go to the legal specialist. We're going to listen to you because you have a series of questions related to personal data. Is this concern, as we said it with in the regulation, shouldn't be more on long term with the risk of blocking initiative, but it should be in a controlled way. Thank you, Professor Sek, and thank you also for the audience. I want to present the apologies of Mrs. the Director General. I'm the director. Legal director of CDP. The question of the stake is very important. Is man condemned to disappear with IoT? If it is an ecosystem that we consider without man, I think personal data have nothing to do with that. The personal data will be always be part of the debate. In a practical way, we have three concerns when we're talking about personal data. It's first of all the mass of data collected, but also the system of collection. It is a collection which is not controlled, because the connected objects are not autonomous as regard the willingness. Most of the time, the individual's consent is required, but most of the time the object don't follow that requirement. This is one concern. The second one is the reuse of the data. It's good to collect and process data, but what is the objective? When the objectives are not explicit, when the users of those personal data don't have a clear idea, it is good to ask about the use of the data. And the third and last concern that we sharing with security and legal sector is cyber criminality. When those data are hacked for the detriment of people and the government. As regard these three concerns, it requires a certain number of actions, especially at three levels. The first level is the regulatory authority. If I take the example of CDP, how should we regulate the connected data? We have to admit that this is a new phenomenon that we don't have a full grasp of. So which requires a time of adaptation. Technology is evolving in a very rapid way. There is an adaptation time, specific text on IoT, but there is no legal void. But it's a part of a technical aspect which we have a grasp of. With the ministry, the ARTP, regulating infrastructures, the criminal codes can provide an answer in issues related to IoT. We have the case of accident of cars referred to as autonomous cars. There is no legal void, but law is not totally adapted to IoT. We are working on to see with the support of technicians and the other component of the society. We have also the responsible of the processing. There is a decentralization phenomenon of the responsibility from the human being to the object. In law, when you move the criteria from who is the guardian of the object did not appear like that. The functionality of the object are not part of an artificial intelligence. There is forcibly a maker, which means that is either the maker who is the guardian or the guardian who is the guardian. In both cases, the responsibility can be located as regard the personal domain and the damages that are going to be caused. The current debate is on the transfer of responsibility based on risk toward a principle of precautions. But we're working on integrating security parameters that will enable us in the future to take into account all those aspects. If this principle is taken into account, it will facilitate things, as we have principles of processing should take that into account. At the same time, inform in a useful way the users. I will end up with the point of view of the user. For the user, there is a major stake of control of the technology. I should always have a control of the technology, the possibility to disconnect and tell the object not to keep on connecting data. I have the right for my private life. You can collect, but at a certain moment, I have the right to disconnect and ask the object not to collect any more data. The second thing, I have the right to know where those objects are stored and what is the objectives, how If I don't have information on it, I become a tool in the service of the object, but not the beneficiary of technologies related to IoT. CDP in its doctrine on IoT shouldn't be a hindrance to the development of technological development, but is calling everyone on the responsibility of all on the implementation of this IoT. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So we are going to hear from the viewpoint of the ministry. So the ministry in which is the lead, and Mr. Jalla has played an independent role in the process. So he really knows about all this, and we're just going to listen to him, and he's going to give us some vision about all this. Thank you, General Director. I think that this round table or this panel is very important because it can help us to start very soon the implementation of an action plan which aims at enhancing IoT. I thought that if I talk last, I would just make a summary of what the prior speakers have already said. But I have a feeling that when I listened to them, there was not more proposals, but just some interrogations. So what I could say is that is a multi-stakeholder. It has started like that, and if we agree on the main actors or the main stakeholders that the main actors that should be stakeholders in this process, the ministry should be able to put in place an ordinance which can make the process go forward. It is a continuous learning process, and as the process, as I have seen the process, it is not something where things are known beforehand. We have to integrate. All the actors. So once the people agree on the actors that we think that they are relevant, then not only the actors of the ecosystem that are already know. We know that we have to work with the ministry, the CDP, and so on. But the question is, who are those who are active in these point when it comes to advocacy, and that we maybe should be able to put an ordinance, ministerial ordinance on that. But when it comes to the scope now, so I'm just going to say something that is just myself. It has nothing to do with the ministry. It is not something. What I can say is that we should not be afraid to make mistakes. We have to start. We have at least some indications on what we are going to start. What is the first indication? We have a national strategy, which is Senegal 2025, which has identified some priority sectors, and there are 6 of them. That can be the first compass that we can use, the first compass on which we are going to use to orient the work. Because if we stay here and say that everything is important and so on, but actually the most important is that we have to start. We have to start. We're not going to say that we are not in line with the validated strategy. So we have from the sector, we have already identified some sectors, and that is a good start. Now the rest is just some pragmatical approaches, and we can debate on that. But there are 2 things that we have to add, which is that in Senegal, we have to see what are the first initiatives when it comes to IoT. Those initiatives are focused on which sector? We know them. We can. It is not very complicated to know those. We can also focus on that. We have to support those initiatives. We are not doing it only. We are doing it to make sure that we learn from those initiatives. We're going to see from those initiatives what are the constraints that were met, what are the risks that can happen, and we are going to learn from those initiatives. So it is very important to integrate those initiatives. The other point that I wanted to talk about is actually today even ISOC word can tell us objectively with the development of IoT, given that it is at its beginning, but it is developing in some countries. What are the main usage? What are the main usages that we know for sure that these are usages that can be disseminated very easily? And on those usages, we have to focus on that. So the main one that can be easily disseminated inside the developed countries or developing countries. And if we take those approaches, we can set a perimeter, knowing that that perimeter is not going to be revised or extended with time. But the very most important thing is that we have to start. But if we don't start, we're going to stay here for a long time hesitating. And the most important for me is the second step. So thank you very much that I wanted to say. So thank you for those words. So you have 3 points, the strategic plan that has already defined some priority domain. That is the first point. And the second one, what are the initiatives that are being conducted here in Senegal and that we have to identify, show, and so on, and also see the constraints of all that. And the last point was to see in the international benchmark what are the usages that can be generalized and that already have an added value somewhere else and can be an added value here. So I think that we have gone around that, and I think that what we have seen in the room with these intervention, the framework is well set. So I'm not going to read, but I'm going to remind you that today there is a memorandum of understanding which was signed at the highest level between ARTP, the ministry, ISOC Senegal, ISOC World to support and deploy such a project. So we will hand you over that document, but there are 7 points, like undertake initiatives, work together for a national process. That's what we are doing. Work for the promotion of the best practices, bring a mutual assistance, and also encourage the participation of stakeholders, exchange information on research and so on, and work for the development and the sustainability of the training content. And the last point, an attribution to the other party when we are using some equipment. So we're talking about sharing. So the debate is set now. Now I'm going to give the floor to the room. We are going to stop when we are called for lunch, and after that we're going to continue after lunch. So the classroom or the room, you have the floor. So no need to make a list. It is an open discussion, and what we are expecting is what the General Secretary of the Ministry just said, or the Chief of Staff of the Ministry, what he just said. He said that what is the perimeter? What we have to move toward the solutions, because one of the output of the meeting is to determine that perimeter and identify some of the project that can give some that can fit the process which is going to be put in place. So who wants to take the floor? Thank you, Tijan. Thank you to the panelists for giving us the details. It was very important. My concern, however, is on the usage, because actually we have a perimeter which is set. We now in the development vision of the country where we are going. We know the IoT, but today the mastery or control of the usage is a very complicated factor. We have young people that are really dynamic. There are a lot of technologies coming in, and the usages are not the same. We can also see how that can be circumvented from the main objective. So in this study, maybe we should have a sociological vision of of IoT. What are the usages? What are the deviations? And see, and from there I go back to the legal framework to see are they supported by the legal framework and so on. So I think that it is very important that we focus on those points. We have to anticipate on the deviations. We want to reinforce security. Security is related to usage, and we can have a prospective vision on what can be the usages, and we will be able to better define or determine the different concerns. And given that it is a multi-stakeholder, it should integrate that sociological vision so that we can move forward. So in the room, are there some actors or stakeholders who have already tried some experience? Are there some representatives here that are doing some experiments, some known or unknown experimentations or experiments? Good morning. My name is Madame Touré, and I represent Sanatel. So in Sanatel, we actually have some attempts to organize some pilot project on IoT, but it was blocked and we did not have the necessary authorization to start those pilots that were planned for 2018. So we are waiting for CDP to answer on that questions. We're still waiting for the authorizations. So just for a reminder, I think that representative of ARTP has already given some indications and he's going to come back on that. But since yesterday, the question was asked many times about the experiment, you know, how can we combine the need of regulation and the need to move forward and to learn. But we'll come back on your point. Are there some concerns about the perimeters that are the most important, or that you think are the most important? So for some experiences, I would just give. So I come from the University of Bombay. My name is Yusuf Kase. So for experiences, we've had some of them. And personally, I have worked with some students and mainly those that I'm supervising at the university. And even with the Ministry of Postal and Telecoms, we had organized a Giftic Day, that's what we called it. And we've had a group of students that won the second award, and they worked on IoT. And we have also worked with Sonatel, and we also had a second award there. So I think that the initiatives are here. The initiatives are in the universities, and we have talked about regulation. It would be good today at the state level that things, I don't know, maybe because Mr. Sek was saying it is something that he read on internet to put right away some regulations that maybe can stop the initiatives of some people. We have to think about that, and especially on the context where we are right now in Senegal. So today, is it the best thing to say that we are going to start or we are going to speed up putting in place regulations which in the future can block the initiatives of people? Or are you going to just leave people lead the life they want to live, and then according to the progress of things they're going to set their own regulations? So these are questions that I have to ask, not to confuse haste and speed. I really think that the people have to leave the initiatives move forward, and later on we can put in place the regulations. So just for the reminder, yesterday the representative of ARTP was saying, for those who were not here, he was saying that already in the current regulations, of course, there are some precautions that are taken when it comes to the power of emission and also power. You can use the free bands to make some experiences on fields that are in compliance to those limitations. So if you have some powers, we are moving into the questions of regime. So anyway, this is just a way to say that there is something which is already in place and which is well monitored. But the question is, is that enough to make the experiment that we want to make? So who else wants to take the floor? Good morning, all. My name is Usman Sar, and I work in a startup which is working on the connected object. I think that to make a regulations, there should be some initiatives first, so that it can be much more objective before we make a recommendation. There should be some cases, some cases, so that ARTP can make the distinction between what is positive and what is negative, because we are working on IoT since 2015, and we've had experimented ladder networks that were here since 2012, like LoRa or Sigfox. Sigfox here in Senegal, here they are not ladder startups that are using it, and LoRa, there are many startups that are developing solutions on the network, on the solution that we want to develop about the energy that should be put in place, and also on the scope. I think that there should be a meeting or a campaign awareness for ARTP, so that they can set the conditions for the use of LoRa. But that is going to depend on the project that have been used with LoRa, so that we can see what is the positive aspect and what is the negative aspect. And from there, we will be able to find a consensus to say that these equipments cannot be used for some frequencies due to X or Y. But if we go from a regulations and behind that there was not a study or a survey that was done, and there is nothing consensual between the companies that are developing those solutions and the IRTP, that will be a big concern. Thank you. Thank you. Maybe I will take the opportunity to just give one example. Myself, I faced an example yesterday. I have already talked about that last year. We had an authorization to test a Sigfox network. However, we did it, we did it throughout the country. We had stations in St. Louis, Dakar, Thiès, Moore. All these stations were connected through some chips, electronic chips, because we have the Sigfox network itself, and the flows go through internet, through the 3G, 4G of the different operators, and the Sigfox platforms, which was in France. However, we were able to do all the necessary experiment for almost 3 months, and we worked on different fields. And the first field was about water, the water, how to make the census of water and the metering of water, actually, because Senegal, the water's meter, they are underground. We were able with SDE, we were able to tell them that when they are visible, we can put in place some IoT sensors, and they have transmission on very long distances without even moving to the place. So we did that in Lac de Guerre, where there were big pumping stations that are doing irrigation, and we gave them the possibility to do the metering of water in a very precise way. So there are many sources where water is metered, and that was the first experience that we had. And the second one that we did was about on fisheries between Dakar and Moura. We put in place 5 antennas, and that gives us the possibility to capture on the small boats the flows up to 10 kilometers. And from 10 kilometers, we lost the signal, but the object was recording almost everything. And when they come back with the contact of the antenna, the object will make a restitution of its road. And we can know if it has gone 100 kilometers, and we can know exactly where the boat has been, and they put that on a small map or on a map. So that is very, very useful. And the third experience that we tried but could not finish it was with a Spanish company. We together put in place a chain that we could put on the cows with a weight, and if the weight, so normally a cow does never lays on the ground unless it is dead. So that if the weight change the positions, it just means that the cow was stolen or has been killed. So those information, we were able to use them, and that was really good. This is just to say that there are some possibilities to make some experiences, but we have to take into consideration the fact that we should be neutral. So there are three systems in the world, but so you have the Fox system, so which they honor, and we have used that here in Senegal. There are some people here in Senegal that are using LoRa, and the idea here is deploying a project which will have a national scope with Huawei and the NB-IoT. This is just to say that there are a lot of technologies. However, we should be able to make sure that the devices that we are going to use are not interdependent. It is not something which is obvious, but we have to think about that. Are there some other intervention before we
intervention before we come back to the room? Thank you, Mrs. Madam Jai Aminata from the Ministry of Communication, Telecommunication. It was just to talk about the scope of stakeholders in relation to IoT. I want to remind in March 2018, we had already a workshop in collaboration with agency Mart Africa, the company Imarsat of the US. We listed the number of actors, startups that are working on IoT who had initiative. It enabled us to see people had projects that have deployed them with the necessary tools to deploy small projects that work perfectly. They experimented and all the new technologies have been presented. There was a training which was very practical with Imarsat for the startups that are very numerous in Senegal. I want to remind also at the state level, we are following the works that are doing at the International Union of Telecommunication, where we can have all the contributions of other countries or other stakeholders who are intervening in the sectors, and we're going to do the diagnosis of the technologies that are working and those which need to be improved. With the recommendation of the International Union of Telecommunications have also to be taken into consideration. Thank you. David, I think you wanted to say something. Thank you. I think there were interesting intervention. I wanted to say some word on one important aspect. When we talk about on this kind of project, there are most of the time contradictory objectives. Here I see two. There is security, which is oftentimes which is a constraint, but we want also to protect innovation. We think that the sector is bringing a lot of opportunity to Senegal, and we have to protect that. When we come here to talk about security, And yesterday we talked about a dangerous threat we have to take into account. On the contrary, the small concern in this kind of situation, we have to find a balance between both. And the problem that we have with IoTs is that oftentimes when these objects are deployed, we have limited access. In other situations, I would even say we should leave innovation and we see afterward. But the problem with IoT is once the objects are deployed, oftentimes we don't know where they are. So we need to plan in advance, try to talk about it, to discuss about it. We are not necessarily here to talk about law, but we have to anticipate more as in other cases. I was very interested by the intervention of the man from CDP in relation to who has the responsibility. We have also to think about on the knowledge of people of the current situation. So we need to plan. Everyone should be conscious about the challenges, all the challenges, but we need to evolve with the situation. We should be technological neutral because things are changing in a rapid way. We need to evolve with the situation. Thank you. As a reminder, yesterday the representative of the Senegal Association of Normalization made a contribution to show the work that that association is currently doing at the level of ISO. I want also to remind you the representative of Canada talked a lot on the labeling, where the object located, how to make sure we have more quality. And this raises the issue of import, who is selling, how can we give information about the objects? Does the user has all information to know in which condition they should use it? Are those objects well designed? As we say, by design, from the beginning, those objects have taken into account information such as the password, which is different from admin, or things like that. So don't forget, these are concerns that have been risen yesterday in yesterday discussion. We also have, I think Jean-Jacques talked about it. He said that there is an existing, which is in the field of electricity, in the metering of electricity, with all these smart meters, and we don't know exactly what's behind in comparison with the habits of consumption. And he shed light on that issue yesterday. But the master word David came back on it is anticipation. We are working on anticipation. There are things that exist. There are things coming that are coming. So we should work on anticipation. Maybe I'm going to go back to the different intervener, and we start with you and we finish with Mr. Sullivan. Let's start with the representative of the minister. Thank you. I think that we had an interesting debate. It came out of it that the issue is large, but we already have consciousness of the interest to to have the perimeter in a perimeter the interest of IoT. This is a first step which is important. All actors, be them public or from the private sectors, be them from the community of researchers, all actors that are the three pillars of innovation are conscious that we should take into account this issue. To me, it's very important. In addition, another point is what you raised a while ago, is when we have a legal framework, it doesn't mean a restriction. The framework, the legal framework, is just to enable on one hand to have a legal a fair competition, but on the other hand to protect the consumers, developing at the same time innovation. That's why when I took the floor a while ago, when I talked about strategic sectors that are identified in the strategy, I started with the current initiatives, because in fact the government is responsible of supporting the current ongoing initiative. This is reflected in the diversity of participants. We are doing this program not for the government, but we're doing for the country, in particular for the private sector, which is the holder of the project. This is fundamental. It's afterward that I talked about the issue of users, which has been repeated by Professor Alex on Corentin, which is interesting too. What I was saying about it, I will come back on it. It's important. We should begin when an issue is broad. We have two ways to tackle it. Either we have the right approach. It is we know what we want to do. For example, a computer specialist will say, I know the algorithm. A mathematician will say, I know the algorithm. But if it is not well known, it is broad, we put just forward rationality and begin with what we think is more important, given that the door is not closed, because it is what is called the learning by doing. To me, that's it. That's the case. The different usage, for example, at the international level, even when we are talking, studies can show it that the first object that are connected, vehicles, buildings that people connect, we will know those who begin, we take them as example and we extend later on. But if not, we will stay there trying to define what's important and we will not begin. So somebody will begin, but we will tell him that you did not cover everything, but he will have the advantage in a year or 18 months, he will know what he has already started. And as the president said, we are in the time of action. So it is fundamental that we rely on the main usages that are known and documented, on which we should rely on. If the perimeter is not set, Mr. Andrew did it. If it is not defined, we will have a problem to move forward. Since I have the floor, I think it's important. Maybe Mr. Sullivan will tell us for the case of Canada, which is more in advance than Senegal, which is proposed as perimeter. It can help, it can be a starting point for a benchmark.
So for Canada, maybe our friend can answer. But what I can say that is Canada is within the process actually. Yes. Maybe Mr. Sullivan can say something about that too. But I just would like to come back on what was said to say that in the afternoon, so here, because we have to finish, but in the afternoon, we will focus on the development of the document, which means that we are going to collect the idea from everybody to start to build the program or the project. So after lunch, please come here so that we can do that building work. And if we have to work in a group also, the microphone. So now I'm going to give the floor to CDP. Thank you, sir. I was really surprised by the intervention of Corentin, because that sociologic dimension, we thinking about it, and it can be a blockade. I have to admit that in some developed countries, the probes has shown that the population were very favorable to the Internet of Things at the expense of the necessary protection of their data. It is the usage that takes it over those security issues. So it is true that the sociologic vision is going to help us better set the orientations or the guidance for regulation, and also for the minister on the what the minister said on the perimeter. I think that a mapping of the usage is going to help us have a precise idea on the much important perimeter for Senegal. Sonatel, universities, public sector, they have shared some experiment, and even in our regulation work, we meet or we face some difficulties, like a authorization request was given to us for the use of drones. But where are you going to place the drones in the usages and the practices? We had some CCVT systems that we authorized that, but when we are called upon for the drones, it was a big issue. And what saved us is that there is a regulation on the drone with the civil aviation and the Minister of Interior. So we had to jump on that, and now we are thinking about that. So we are surprised by some requests, because some of them we are not prepared. We are not prepared for some of those requests. So this work is going to be very useful for us, and is going to help us have a different approach on the regulation, on privacy, and so on. So we are committed, and we are going to contribute so that we can better intervene and better respond, and not be a blockade for innovation or for the opportunities. Thank you very much. Thank you, Professor. I think that ARTP was called open, but thank God you have answered to some of the questions. Sonatel said that we blocked a project that they wanted to do, but in your presentation you have said that you had some periods to make some experiment, so you can have a better idea of some of the technologies. What would be interesting is to see what was the feedback. What can we capitalize on that experience? And I think that it is very important to share and make sure that it is going to be disseminated. I think that what was said on the initiatives in the universities is very important. It is important for many reasons, because apart from the fact of being a consumer, we are used to import technology. It would be good that in our laboratories, and especially for IoT, we should be able to make some breakthroughs, because technology or the level of complexity of technology is not no longer that big, and we have a margin to do something and develop things that are really good for us. That would be easier to do what what we call security by design, or to focus on security by design if we can design things from here and also have the impact that we want. I would like, however, to focus on the perimeter. The perimeter is very important. Globally speaking, in the industrial sector of the companies and so on, they are all in lines with some standards, because to market some connected object to the companies, you have to respect some standards, or you have to go by some standards. But the domestic use is much more light, and that an idea which could be interesting is to focus on the domestic perimeter. I mean the house perimeter, what we can buy. And on that viewpoint, why I think that it can be dangerous is that we might have some objects that are just mundane and that can generate some attacks, or as that was the case in the United States, create some problems with a very big scope, and also bring a whole country down. And before you realize that this is where everything started, like it was the fridge that started all that, because it was not designed with the required security. So it is very dangerous, because these are objects that you can find almost everywhere. Anything which is about those small objects in the companies, there are some control about that. But what we have in our houses, we don't have a full control on all that. And the other point that Mr. Sullivan was talking about, and which is also a very important factor, is the lifespan. The lifespan. So today, maybe the object is secure, but in between there might, with time, there will be some shortcomings. We did not thought about updating it. The object is there for 12 years, 15 years, you know. So someone may just use it to do whatever they want to do. And I think that is a real problem. I think that the care that we have in the different companies and the stuff, we don't have it in our houses. Because as long in our houses, as long as the device is working, you're saying don't touch it, it's okay. So, but we are going to see in the afternoon if we have to focus on what we call the domestic sector, or what is happening within our houses. Thank you. Just a small points on that. There was also a question which we have to think about. It is the identification of the object in which framework. So like the domestic framework based on wireless. So that identification is a problem. But if you are in a structured network with some objects that are connected to platforms, of course, there is an identification which can be done. There also we have to think about. I would like to give the floor to the representative of Canada to just tell us what the situation of Canada that has already started a reflection with a whole framework. Bon, je vais aussi donner ma réponse en anglais. C'est que ce que je comprends, c'est ce que nous avons fait au Canada. Où en sommes-nous? Le Canada donc a beaucoup avancé dans ce processus. On a commencé avec le comité de supervision, ça doit faire une année, et on s'est rencontré avec 4 groupes d'acteurs, et ces acteurs se sont donc divisés en 3 focus groups pour répondre à tout ce qui est en rapport avec la sécurité des IoT, mais aussi les appareils qui sont dans nos maisons, les appareils dans les entreprises. Et ces groupes, donc, c'est pour l'éducation de ces consommateurs, la labellisation de ces appareils. On essaie donc d'éduquer, mais de former les consommateurs et de protéger le réseau en tant que tel. Chacun de ces groupes s'est beaucoup rencontré. Il y a des rencontres en ligne, il y a des rencontres physiques, et ils ont commencé à créer des rapports pour essayer de définir ce qu'ils croient être les aspects les plus importants par rapport à la sécurité de chacun de ces groupes et ce qu'ils peuvent aussi faire. Il y a des rapports il y a un rapport qui a été révisé d'une de nos en compte et le groupe est d'accord que les groupes sont sur la bonne voie. Ils sont en train donc de finaliser ces rapports avec toutes les idées. On va les publier début année prochaine. Comme ça, chacun dans le groupe peut voir quelles sont les suggestions et s'assurer que nous avons donc créé un bon document compréhensif. Et février-mars, nous allons condenser tous ces rapports en un seul grand rapport par rapport au processus, mais aussi par rapport au travail qui a été fait. Après, maintenant, ce sera ouvert pour consultation publique. Donc, chacun pourrait faire des commentaires, ajouter des suggestions pour créer un document puissant, un document fort. Hier, j'ai parlé de ce que les groupes ont fait. Il y a beaucoup d'informations qui sont disponibles au niveau du site web, en particulier pour le projet canadien. Vous pouvez aussi voir le document provisoire pour voir ce qui a été fait. Mais pour l'éducation, bien la formation des consommateurs, il y a un cadre qui a été créé pour essayer de voir comment est-ce que les différents acteurs doivent gérer ces différents points, comment est-ce qu'ils doivent travailler ensemble. Il y a aussi le groupe sur la labellisation, ils ont fait des suggestions par rapport à ce qui devait être un bon label et quel est aussi le label pour les objets statiques et les objets donc. Comment aussi avoir les mises à jour. Tout ceci est important. Si l'appareil n'est plus sûr plus tard. Nous avons aussi travaillé avec un groupe, il y a aussi un groupe qui a parlé donc de la résilience et il travaille sur un prototypage, une passerelle qui va permettre aux consommateurs de lier leurs objets à quelque chose avant que ce soit lié au réseau. Et ceci aussi peut avoir un impact négatif sur donc, le réseau. En tout cas, c'est un processus qui est ouvert et on peut toujours avoir beaucoup d'informations sur le site. Thank you. We will make sure that you give you those two links, the links on the Canadian process, which is ongoing. They have taken more than 1 year, and they also have more months before they completely finish that process to go to some applicable recommendations. So here, as you can see, we are in a prospective approach, which is open, including ourselves. We can also intervene and give some ideas on the Canadian process. So it is an open process. It is open to everybody. We will give you the website. We also give you the website for the process which has been set in place by UNESCO and that you have seen a bit earlier, which means that we have a lot of things. We have a lot of things based on which we can build our own work. So to finish the day, we are going to give the floor to Mr. Sylvan, who have listened to everybody. We are in the country of Teranga, which means that we have to give the honor to our host so that they can give us their viewpoint. Merci. J'ai remarqué donc certains points sur lesquels je vais revenir, mais très rapidement, parce que c'est bientôt l'heure de la déjeuner. Il y a 3 choses que j'ai entendues qui sont très importantes. En premier, nous avons, donc c'est très important de profiter de ce que les autres ont déjà fait, de prendre avantage de ce que les autres ont déjà fait, les points sur lesquels ils ont travaillé dans ce domaine. Ça, c'est vrai. Et c'est quelque chose de très important. Donc, le Sénégal, c'est un bon pays, mais ce n'est pas le plus grand pays au monde. Et des fois, c'est très difficile de travailler sans prendre en compte les autres parties du monde. L'Internet est global et s'impose à nous. Et aussi, c'est juste un seul marché de tout le monde. Il faut avoir quelque chose qui est consistant, qui est cohérent par rapport à la façon dont le reste du monde fonctionne. Le deuxième point, c'est que ce n'est pas un environnement statique. On ne peut pas mettre une boîte et dire que maintenant c'est fini, tout est bien. Parce que les défis de sécurité sont en évolution, l'environnement aussi est en évolution. Ce serait donc tragique d'élaborer des régulations ou bien une loi ou bien quelque chose qui va empêcher l'innovation dans ce domaine. Parce que le potentiel est très fort. Historiquement parlant, nous avons des règlements, une régulation par rapport dans certains points. Et l'Internet ne marche pas de la même façon dans les différents pays. Mais le plus important, c'est que lorsque nous adoptons des règles, on veut donc avoir quelque chose de léger au début de cette technologie et plus tard, maintenant, on va essayer de développer quelque chose, bien un cadre beaucoup plus complet. Et dès l'instant qu'on sera sûr que nous avons une bonne idée de ce qu'est le marché et ce qui n'est pas le marché. L'Internet en tant que tel n'est donc il y a de cela 15 ans, l'interprétation en tout cas qu'on avait par rapport à ça, qu'on avait à l'Internet, c'est l'Internet des objets n'a pas encore été inventé. Il y a cela 25 ans. Donc, ce serait dangereux de faire une régulation exagérée par rapport à ce point. Il faudra que l'on fasse attention et tout ce que l'on crée doit être plastique ou bien élastique. Comme ça pourra se développer avec le développement de l'Internet des choses. Ça aussi, c'est une chose. L'autre point, c'est qu'il y a des... Voilà, il y a des idiots, il y a des meilleurs idiots qui sont toujours créés partout dans le monde. C'est une expression anglaise. Et tout ceci veut dire que les menaces vont continuer à être ici. Il y aura toujours de nouvelles opportunités. Les personnes qui veulent exploiter ces opportunités pour leur propre avantage, sans pour autant donc nous compenser par rapport à la participation et autres, ils sont très ingénieux. Alors, il faut qu'on s'assure que l'on peut développer nos responsabilités ou notre réaction de façon appropriée. J'ai eu une conversation très importante avec un journaliste qui disait que qu'est-ce que vous dites à ces personnes qui veulent un traité et lorsqu'ils disent que l'industrie privée ne marche pas rapidement et je veux comprendre comment est-ce qu'un traité va être, donc comment un traité va permettre d'accélérer tout ceci. Mais bon, en fait, le dernier point sur lequel je vais m'épancher, c'est que il y a la façon dont ces menaces marchent dans l'interconnectivité. Nous ne l'avons pas encore bien compris. Quand on parle de régulation, on se focalise sur un truc, sur quelque chose qui est spécifique. Comme par exemple une régulation par rapport à un objet. Comme par exemple, on peut dire régulation électrique. Là, vous allez spécifier comment est-ce que, quelles sont les conditions, comment est-ce que l'interrupteur marche, comment on doit se brancher sur le réseau, ainsi de suite. Donc là, vous savez quoi faire. Maintenant, le problème avec l'Internet des objets, c'est que demain, quelqu'un peut créer une nouvelle technique pour se connecter à ça. Et ceci change pas seulement la façon dont le réseau marche, mais ça change aussi la définition même de l'objet. Et aussi ce que l'objet peut faire, parce que vous l'avez branché de façon différente. Vous n'avez pas donc changé l'objet, mais vous avez changé la façon dont l'objet fonctionne. Vous avez donc tous vos appareils qui peuvent faire des choses, mais en général, ce n'est pas des choses qui sont surprenantes. Vous savez exactement ce que ça doit faire, mais la façon dont se connecter à ces choses-là peut changer. Demain, on peut avoir quelque chose qui, hier, faisait quelque chose de façon différente et demain va faire ça d'une autre façon qui est différente. Ça, c'est quelque chose qui est possible. Donc, c'est très élastique. Ce n'est pas qu'on a fait quelque chose par rapport à la chose, mais c'est parce que quelqu'un a introduit quelque chose qui est nouveau. Alors, cette partie de l'environnement doit être prise en compte pour mieux s'assurer qu'on ne manque pas ce point-là. Et c'est venu dans la majorité de ce que vous avez dit en ce qui concerne l'Internet des objets. L'environnement dans lequel nous travaillons est très dynamique et ça, c'est un des défis auxquels nous allons être confrontés. c'est pas seulement les données qui se trouvent dans la chose, mais aussi les données qui se trouvent dans les serveurs associés, les données qui se trouvent dans les autres serveurs qui vont permettre d'avoir des données par rapport à cet appareil. Il y a beaucoup d'interactions auxquelles nous devons penser pour mieux développer ou bien élaborer ce cadre qui sera donc un cadre raisonnable. Mais il faut que ce soit flexible pour essayer donc d'inclure les nouvelles innovations qui peuvent venir demain. Avec cette perspective assez lugubre, bon, je vais m'arrêter ici et peut-être après on va revenir pour mieux discuter par rapport aux fondamentaux sur ce que nous voulons faire. Merci beaucoup. So this is the end of the morning, and just on what has already been said, I just want to focus on one point. Internet was created, let's say, in the 80s or in the 90s, and it is only after 30 years that we started to know exactly what is it, and we are trying to regulate that. IoT is being developed. It is not stable, so we should be in a prospective approach. We should not be surprised. We have to start thinking about what that is going to be, what the Internet of Things is going to be in the days to come or in the years to come. Thank you, everybody. My name is Mr. Seke, and I don't know if there are some people who has gay as family name, but it is time to go for lunch. So round of applause for all our people, and see you in a bit.